Welcome to Point to Rise, your podcast that gives you permission to dream big, take messy action, and turn your talent into profit while turning your back on perfection. My name is Suzanne Purcell, high performance and mindset coach, former international ballerina, profitable entrepreneur, and founder of Point to Rise, a movement designed to empower dancers. It is my mission to use my own story as an inspiration for today's generation of dancers. And now sit back, stretch, warm up, or sip your coffee and love learning how much it matters to point at yourself first to rise to all that you are capable of. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Point to Rise podcast. My name is Suzanne Purcell and I am your host today. Today we have Ali Phillips in the house, y'all. My gosh, this conversation went from authenticity to how she built her business to money mindset to things that she has learned in her personal not career but teaching or and learning on how to be a dancer into her coaching practice that she is leading right now. So Ali Phillips began her career after founding Busted Move Dance, one of Australia's first inclusive dance companies for children, teens, and young adults with disability in 2009. I want to remark here that she only was 17 at that point. Gaining unparalleled experiences in the dance education and business space, while also establishing herself as a represented leader, Ali discovered a passion for creating inclusive communities. Currently living in Toronto and specializing as an embodied leadership coach for dance and fitness studio owners, Ali is widely known for her ability to disrupt and challenge the status quo. While teaching dance will always be her first passion, empowering those around her to first decondition handed down money stories. Secondly, facilitating a hard conversation around social issues. And third, and last but not least, learn to tap into the energetics of self trust, has allowed her to support young professionals, business founders, and CEOs not limited to the dance space to embody their unique approaches to leadership. Her why is to recognize the potential in herself and others so that they have the freedom and choice to create the authentic life they deserve to live. So, without no further ado, please enjoy this conversation. And I hope you will start following her. I hope that you will find your own nuggets to take out, and please don't be shy to share them later on your social media so we know what your takeaways are. There you go. Hello, Beth. Thank you for being here. She is the voice that always tells us that we're recording. And I'm sure anybody listening to this podcast already sees her as either a co-host or their best friend. BFF, is that what we say nowadays? Yeah. Ali, thank you so much for being here on the podcast. I am so thrilled that we are having a conversation that we just going to talk about everything and anything that really is on our soul. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for having me. I know we can talk. You and I, we can just I was like, I feel like we should press record at some point. Otherwise, we're going to have a podcast before the podcast before the podcast. I love it.
Yes, amen to that. So, funny backstory, the way you and I met, I was very unconventional. Me sending you a voice message with a full mouth because I was so excited to get a DM from you. I had no shame around who I was and who I am, and always felt so comfortable to just be me. And that's how we showed up on our first call, talk about the podcast recording. And I don't think we actually talked about that. We talked about everything else.
So much stuff. I know. I feel like when one person extends that authentic invitation, like I did, like I sent you a voice note and I was myself as well. It holds space and it gives space for others to also meet you there. So I feel like it was a beautiful first exchange and then an amazing conversation.
So let's just stay there for a second. When we show up as our authentic self, we give other people permission to do exactly the same. I think that alone is such an important topic because with your background and my background, being in dance and arts and even sometimes in business, showing up authentically, we don't even know what that means anymore
Yeah.
because we have been taught to fit in this tight little container that there is no room for us where we're maybe too much or too little or too fat or too skinny or not enough of something. That finding our strength and our individuality and our superpowers is almost an impossible task. How do
Yeah.
you feel about that?
I feel very aligned. I think as well, when being in an industry where you're not encouraged to speak your mind or encouraged to be different, when you are, it can be very jarring and it can be very intimidating. And so there's this kind of energy of like, shh, like just that's a bit too much. Like, shh, you're just like a bit too much for us. And it's very different. And we don't really know how to deal with that. And so you either choose to continue, or as so many people do, they tend to conform. um and then it gets to 10 years down the track and they go, oh gosh, that was that sliding door moment where I could have stood in my worth, and now I've kind of lost myself. And it's not to say that I've got it all figured out, but I consciously and continuously decided to make choices that maybe, yeah, put me outside of the in group, or that that showed that I was kind of like this quote unquote outsider or black sheep. And when you decide to take that role, and assume that position, there are sacrifices that come with that. But I believe that being authentic is always the right path, always.
Do you, it's a very interesting term to, we have to make sacrifices to be ourselves.
Mm,
You know, I, it may feel like that in the moment, but down the road, being yourself is never a sacrifice. I think
true.
personally. Um,
Absolutely.
Anita, we're talking about this. Like I was just talking about on social media in the morning in the gym, you're like heads down, and there were these two younger women next to me starting to compete with me out of the blue. And I thought it was all in my head because I have this issue with women. And, now they're younger and they're prettier, they're tighter, they're faster, they're stronger, whatever that is. And I'm just like, okay, I'm going to let this go. I'm going to let this go. But inside of me, I still felt like, oh, I'm not fitting in. I need to do better. I
Mm,
can't do this. Maybe if I, and I'm like, oh gosh, stop it.
yeah.
Like just be you. You're here for you. You're not here for them.
Yeah.
Um, and I thought it was all in my head until the moment we got out and my husband said, oh my gosh, what just happened in there? Like what was going on? Why
Wow.
did
So
they
he
look
felt it.
at you like this?
That's weird. That's bizarre.
I know.
I mean,
But
mm,
it showed me that not always is us showing up authentically an invitation to do the same. It also can be a threat. And is it a sacrifice looking back? No, it's not.
uh,
Like it's not. You may not be fitting into the arena that you want to be a part of, but understand that the price that you have to pay for it, you may never ever get back.
100%. Yeah. I mean, I started my business at 17. I was very young. At that time, you don't know too much. So at the time, it did feel like sacrifice because I didn't have the awareness or the understanding of, okay, well, why do it was a conscious choice to run with the business, but a lot of my friends didn't have businesses. And so I needed to uphold that responsibility. I had to deal with consequences, even though I had to speak on behalf of my teachers. And it was just at that age, yeah, I think it felt like sacrifice. But then looking back, and being how I am now, I wouldn't change it. You're right. Like I think there's at the time maybe it feels like that, but I definitely am aligned with that. It's always for the best.
While we're at it, let's go high level a little bit about you and where you're coming from. 17, starting a business. I
Yeah.
feel that we don't hear that often. Um, Even when we're looking at dancers, yeah, they're becoming or they're going into companies at 18, 19, yet they don't see it as like starting their own business. And
Mm.
it's not the same what you have done for sure. But I wish that down the line we could actually look at dancers stepping into a company, even though they're, under contract, they're still their own business. But I want to talk too
Well,
much.
no, I mean, I can speak on that. Like I could have at that age not run with that title of like business owner. I could have said, "Oh, I'm a dance teacher," or I run a small community, a community program. Um, but I felt in my value saying I'm a business owner, and there is this level of confidence that comes with this ability to say I run a business. And whether or not you're speaking about 18, 19-year-old dancers who decide to, you know for themselves to be their own business and their own brand, like be confident in saying that, because what happens is when you start to say it, you start to affirm it, you start to believe it, live it, you start to operate from that place. And so if I spent the first 5 years being like, oh, I'm a dance teacher, maybe I wouldn't have taken my role as and the position as seriously, and that wouldn't have prepared me in my mindset to go after things that I wanted, or to make hard decisions on behalf of other people, or just take myself seriously. I think titles, I think as much as we can get attached to them, I believe everything has high and low expressions. So the highest expression of calling myself a business owner is that it supports my ability to believe in myself, to speak from a place of value. The low expression of that may that it might have gone to my head, and it totally did at some point. And I was making decisions from a place of ego at that point. I had no idea. But either way, I think there's such validity in being confident with the titles that you give yourself and not getting too attached to them, but knowing that they come from a place of like worthiness, So I love that.
And if I may add, like if you think of yourself, you're running your own business, and if that's you, and let's say your support team, like your physiotherapist and your Pilates teacher, and you
Yes.
show up differently. You have a completely different mindset. You empower yourself um, to show up as a leader
100%.
and not somebody that just tries to fit in a box out of fear of not being enough. And I think that's where right, Ellie, that's where the difference is. I think you just said it so beautifully. Um, how you manifested in
Mm,
your head,
mm,
you being way more than you really wanted to be.
mm. I would also say that something that I had to develop at a very young age, because I was running a business, and this can be applied to independent solopreneurs, not someone that has an actual, studio or space, is that I had to develop a very strong internal trust muscle at a very young age. The company that I started, it's a dance company for people with disabilities, and it's still very niche. But 12 years ago, it was very, very niche. And so there were a lot of people that wanted to give me their advice, give me their 2 cents, have a say, contribute to how the business was run. And I had to get really clear on my values and the way in which I wanted to run my business, so that I could say and sit in a really grounded, empowered no. I was able to say yes to the things that felt very aligned. I was able to set boundaries. So this is not just applicable to people that run brick and mortar businesses. This is if you are independent as well, where is your trust muscle? What are your values, so that you can communicate your boundaries, right? Because I believe that our values are a physical expression of our internal trust, because we need language and communication to be able to set boundaries. But if you are constantly looking outside of yourself for answers, or you're easily swayed, like you make a decision and then someone says something and then all of a sudden you change your mind, or you're over analyzing everything, it's an indication that you just don't trust yourself yet. There's
Mm.
always room to improve, but just right now, I would encourage you to get really clear on how to develop that strong trust muscle, because that's something that I have had with me for a very long time. And sorry, just to finish, that even supports the decisions that I make that didn't end how I wanted it to either. I was able to, knowing that I made the decision, I'm happy to deal with the consequences because I made that decision. So yeah,
And not somebody else for
yeah,
you, right?
yeah,
Because
yeah,
that's powerless. Um,
absolutely.
so tell us, what was your biggest struggle
Mm.
when you were in your dancer training? And how did you
Mm.
use that as your fire and your fuel to
Mm.
become a coach?
Mm. Like I said, I think everything has high and low expressions. So communication was absolutely and has always been a strength of mine. But sometimes when I'm in alignment, I can operate at the highest expression of my communication, which means really respectful, really honest, really aligned. But one of the greatest challenges I've had is that I'm very in my masculine energy. And so I can be incredibly aggressive. I can be very intimidating. I can be very abrasive. And that through my communication breaks barriers. People don't want to work with you if you are not a nice human being, if you are not acknowledging someone else's opinion before jumping in and getting really defensive or very resistant or very reactive. This is, as much as this is an indirect answer to your question, because as a dancer growing up, I didn't take the professional route. I went straight from comp kid to business because I was 17, right? So I was very young. I didn't go into the professional dance world, but I had enough of a taste. And then the business was the thing that kind of led me into the pre-professional professional world. But I always felt like I wasn't mindful. None of the decisions I was making were mindful or conscious or aware. It was very, I didn't know that it was ego at the time, but now that I understand it to be um, just a bit reactive. And I think communication is one of the greatest skills that we can have in, once again, setting boundaries, using our voice, asking for what we want, apologizing and taking accountability and taking responsibility. So I would say, even though I'm communication is a strength, I would also say it was one of my greatest challenges because I let my reactivity kind of get the best of me, and I've learned through my approach, my mindful approach, and through meditation and through spirituality, just to calm down a bit, and be a bit more conscious.
Hmm.
Mm.
Thank you for that. That was a lot. So here's what stood out for me. Mindful. Like, you had a lot of the word mindful in your explanation, in your answer. Can we dive a little deeper in what that actually means to you? And here's my why. I want to pick this apart because we hear a lot of now mindfulness for dancers, mindfulness for the arts, mindfulness all around, mental health. But what does that actually mean? And I don't, want the Wikipedia. I'm
Mm.
not looking for that kind of explanation. I'd love to know what it really means to you and how you are um, giving it as a gift to your clients.
Mm. So the best and most effective way, I think, to communicate my connection to mindfulness is the idea of space.
Mm.
I think our minds are cluttered. Our worlds are very cluttered. There's a lot of stimulus. There's a lot happening everywhere. Phones, communication, work, space, physical environment. Being mindful feels like space between my thoughts to slow down a bit, space between reacting and communicating, taking a breath, having space between conversation, having space even in your physical environment. Like there's less clutter. And when there's less clutter, you can see clearer, you can think clearer, you can separate yourself from what's happening so that there's more awareness. And so when I adopted a very personal meditation practice 3 years ago, that's what I noticed is I was like, whoa, there's more space between my thoughts. And for someone that doesn't understand that, because I don't want this to be inaccessible, what I mean by that is if you kind of like close your eyes and picture your mind as like a whole set of like boxes, and the boxes are all like tightly pieced together and there's no room in between them, like how do ideas and thoughts move? How you're communicating from this really boxed in cluttered place. And if you allow space, it's almost like, I think the easiest way to explain it is it just feels slower so that you get to decide what's important for you and what's not important for you. And so breath work and meditation helped with that, because all you have is your breath in meditation and nothing else. And it's this process of filtering out thoughts and coming back to your breath. And we need to unplug from the distractions in our lives, the distractions of the phone, the distractions from over analyzing, the distractions of comparison, of needing to speak, that there's so many distractions. And I think mindfulness is like, it supports our ability to kind of find space between those distractions.
And with that, it actually enables you to um, be so much better and get really to the core of your
Mm.
higher self, I would say, and your ability to perform as well. You
Yeah.
know,
Oh,
you no longer have to, when you find that space and that permission and the awareness, you no longer have to pretend. Like the energy that you put out on a daily basis, pretending to be something that you are not, consciously or not, when that energy is set free and you actually apply that on the right, into the right direction, gosh, the stars, there is no limit, right? I feel that's something that we don't allow performing artists, dancers at this moment to really step into yet.
Mm.
Like,
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I feel that too. The benefits of bringing space to your thoughts and
mhm.
separating yourself from what's happening in your mind and detaching from the stories that you make up is freedom. Like that's like actual personal freedom.
Totally. Yeah.
That's what it is. And my thoughts are as separate from me as this glass. We just don't see it that way because, well, first of all, there's no guidance around it. You know, you kind of have to figure it out on your own and you learn from books and whatnot. But there is like an energetic kind of composition of things like glass, things like a glass. And this is clearly not me, but our thoughts are also energetic compositions. We just don't see them because they're invisible. And when they're invisible, because we are, I mean, I think I might be getting a little bit too deep. It's we associate with our thoughts way too much. We make up stories about ourselves all the time. I even made a post yesterday, and this can be applied absolutely to performing artists as well, is that emotions are just energy in motion, but we don't allow them to move. They
Mm,
come into us and we feel them, and then we make up stories about them, and then they get blocked. And when they get blocked, they grow. And then anytime, for instance, if it's something to do with some sort of performance and someone says, "Oh, you didn't do that well today." And you feel this sense of rejection, but you hold on to the rejection, and then you make up stories about the rejection. The next time anyone says anything about a performance, it doesn't matter if it's the same performance, something different 5 years later. If you have not allowed that energy and that emotion to move through, then you're going to get that same rejected feeling, and you're going to circle back to that same story that you made up. So we need to start to move thoughts through, move emotions through. I like to consider myself this empty vessel that is just allowing emotions and thoughts and experiences to pass through.
mm. And it is so powerful to have that kind of awareness. I feel personally that when I started personal development, I didn't start that when I was a performer. I started when I had my own business. And I wish I had known. I think this is the sentence that comes back to me over and over and over again, that all of these things are out there, that I don't have to buy into my thoughts, that I am actually the creator of them myself, and therefore I can choose what I think. Um, and had I known, I believe that my career would have looked completely different. So we're gonna pivot a little bit. You are an embodied leadership coach, and your audience, your people that are working with you right now are choreographers, leaders, crew directors, anybody that's teaching others how to perform. Is that correct?
Yeah, and studio owners,
Yeah.
fitness, dance studio owners, but studios that are not limited to a brick and mortar. Company directors, school owners, independent dance artists and creatives, solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, business owners.
Mm. Why did you choose that niche?
Well, to be honest, very simply, it's because that's who I am. And that's the most connected, that's the path that I feel the most connected to. I I feel like I have the most experience as someone that has run a company and had the experience of running a business, of hiring people, of letting people go, of managing people, of inspiring people, of bringing people together, of having to do all the management side of things. um and the leaders out there who want to use their businesses as vehicles for social change, for incredible impact and contribution. I am my client. I am my own client. I coached myself through my distraction, through my fear. I leapt into the unknown. I moved countries. I left my business. I abdicated. I've micromanaged. I've come back to being present with it. I've had to take space. I've messed up. I've inspired. I've done it all. So I'm prepared and equipped, and I understand what it's like. I understand the experience. I can be empathetic and compassionate. But I also am highly accountable too. I've created stuff because of this masculine energy that I think a lot of artists, it's an underdeveloped part of their energy as creatives. Mm.
Well, interesting that you say that. I we'll get back to that or
Yeah.
offline. Um, so here's what I think around the importance of the work that you're doing. Um, I think the reason why we are in the performing arts world, in the dance world, where we are right now, why we're still here, why nothing has changed from, let's say, the 80s or even 70s to practices right now, or not much, um, is because people get from their performing time into a leadership position. And when I'm doing the crow feed here, they go into studio ownership, they lead companies, but yet they don't know what that actually means to be a leader, to be, no more responsible just for yourself and your own actions, but you actually lead others to be their very best self and to empower them to step into that spotlight. And that transition is a hard transition. And we expect people to just make that transition because they were great dancers or great performers. And we forget that one has absolutely nothing to do with the other. And we're not setting them up for success. Yet the ego is so strong that this career path has been laid into as kind of a hook and a security blanket that if you are a great dancer, you will be invited to lead a company. And we have not yet looked at what great leadership could actually look like in a studio, because we don't look at the arts or performing arts, ballet companies, you name it, as an actual business. Um, I would love to talk about maybe the two biggest things that you see where the mindset shift can come in and really is helpful, and what that actually does for your clients and for the people that they impact.
Hmm. As it relates to leadership, for sure, I have two sayings that I feel like are kind of like guiding lights for me. One is who we are is how we lead. And the other one is the way we do one thing is the way we do all things. And so I do believe that leaders are anyone who kind of sees the potential in someone else and wants to uplift. But what comes with that is the deep need for self awareness. And when you are self aware and when you understand who you are, then things like delegation happen. And we don't need to think that we need to do it all, that if we need to carry the entire company on our backs. Believe me, I did that. It is so unsatisfying. I would not ever recommend anybody just, you don't need to have a business partner, but I'm saying like have people involved in your vision, but without awareness of the things that make you great and the areas for improvement, you're going to be in your own way. You're going to be in your own way and your business is going to be quite limited. So this idea of who we are is how we lead. They're not, who we are as a business owner, a leader is not separate from who we are. Sometimes I think we separate them, and when we separate them, we compartmentalize who we are as people, and therefore we're not showing up as our whole selves. I'll give you an example. Values. I don't have a personal set of values and then a professional set of values. I don't believe values are contextual. I don't believe they change with context. And so my three values are intuition, curiosity, and connection. And I understand that values shift and change, but that's what they are and they have been for the last year. And so that's how I show up in my business as well. And I'm very grounded in those values. And so when something comes along and I feel like I'm out of my depth, because I know where my strengths lie, then I can ask someone else to help me. But if I didn't have that awareness, then we're going to bottleneck our businesses. So that's the first one, is who we are is how we lead. And the second one is the way we do one thing is the way we do all things. And this goes back to the compartmentalizing. We don't realize most of the time that how we show up in our personal relationships, like intimate romantic relationships, is exactly the same as how we show up in professional, how we show up with family, how we show up with self. And so we try and really separate. Well, my business has nothing to do with my personal life. It's like, yeah, but the thing that they have in common is you, and you are your business. My business is a physical extension of who I am. They're not separate. We may have different marketing and branding and different colors, but if I'm running my business, then my business is who I am. And so how I speak and how I show up in my personal relationships is a clear indication of how I'm showing up as a leader. It all comes down and back to self-awareness.
Oh, wow. How you do one thing is how you do everything, right? How you do the little things is how you do the big things.
Mm.
Um, that
Everything
I
touches everything.
Yes. And I believe looking back, that is exactly what was missing. Not um,
Mm.
even though the need to be a dancer 24/7 meant applying everything that was happening in the studio into your personal life, meaning that, if you take 10 classes a day, well, take an 11th one in your living room. And there was no space
Mm.
for allowing yourself to be you. You can still be a dancer, you can still embody it, but as you as a person, you as Ali, you as Grace, whoever you are, you need to know who you are, and you can bring that person into the studio, because that, to circle back to our first conversation, this is a hard word, the authenticity, you as you knowing yourself, being aware of your strengths and weaknesses, will make you the person that has the full body glitter on, not just the spot on your back. It's your full body, and people can feel your energy. People will see you on stage in a studio, and they will gravitate you, and that is how you, how can I say that? Will stand out in a big
Right.
audition studio, right?
Yeah.
It is not about doing more. No, it's understanding what you have and letting that shine.
Yeah. I remember I was listening to a podcast with Oprah, and she was being interviewed, and she was saying that when she was starting her talk show, a lot of producers were coming to her and telling her about what was going on, like what the other talk show hosts were doing. And she was like, I don't want to know. I believe in what I have. Anyone can do anything that they want, but I'm going to choose tunnel vision. And I definitely really resonated with that. And not everyone will. People, tunnel vision can breed naivety and ignorance and all those kind of things. But as it relates to my business, comparison is probably one of the greatest distractions that I have in my life. And I it is just the most debilitating thing. And so, one of the ways that I've really unplugged from my distraction of comparison is by getting really clear on what makes me so unique and so awesome. And I know a lot of times we say focus on your weaknesses and bring the weaknesses up. I prefer to kind of focus on my strengths and leave my weaknesses.
Yeah.
Focus on what makes me amazing and be really, really awesome at that. I know as a coach that I am highly accountable, that I bring a tough love approach. That's what makes me different than other coaches out there, because I'm going to tell you exactly how I see it. I'm going to be the most accountable. That's what you're paying me to do. So yes, I have the experience and I've got the passion, and but what I really focus on and how I continuously show up is my high level accountability and my tough love. So that when I see other coaches and their approach, I'm not like, oh my God, I should be doing that and I should be more compassionate, or I'm like, no, no, no. Remember, what makes you special and what makes you unique is being highly accountable and having a tough love approach. And that doesn't mean that we can't also be other things. But if we understand what makes us, what our secret medicine is, then we can really stay grounded in that. And that can bring a sense of confidence.
Mm. Oh, I love that. And that is so needed, right? Being the competition is such a killer of joy and faith and grace and abilities too. Because if you're living in a state of comparing yourself to other people, you're putting in your energy into others and not in actually finding out who you are and what you're great at. Um, Now, when you are coaching, walk us through, like, do you have, what kind of programs are you at the moment having? And I want to also point out, you're such a badass. And if we have to cut this out, please go ahead. In actually establishing your coaching business. So let me reel back. When who is your coach right now? Because I strongly believe when I choose my coaches, I always ask them who their coach is, because then I know where they're actually taking their wisdom from, who are they being inspired by, and is this going to be somebody that I would down the road perhaps work with. So right now, who is your coach? Where are you feeding yourself? How are you filling your cup?
Mm. So actually, I'm very new to the coaching space, even though I've been teaching for 12 years. The only program that I've been in, I was in this amazing program called Kaboom. It was run by Preston Smiles and Zion Kim. And that is the only exposure to coaching that I have had. I have group calls with them every week, and they're an amazing organization for coaches that are wanting to get really clear on their offering. Um, but other than that, I don't have a personal coach that I work with. I will, however, say that I am obsessed with Brene Brown. And I listen to all of her, I've read all of her books, I listened to all of her podcasts, and I really took what she was saying, and then I filtered it through my experience and my consciousness, and have really created my own product. And she's been such a huge influence on me as well.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily who we hire and pay, but she's your coach because you chose her
Yeah.
data, her information, all of the content that she has as something to inspire you, to fuel you, to give you creativity and thought processes that lead you to your own special
Yeah.
sauce. And that's, let's look at Gabby Bernstein. Like, she built her entire um, brand by reinstating A Course of Miracles.
Yeah.
That's what she's been teaching. Jack Canfield, same, no, Dyer.
Yes. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
what's his Wayne Dyer, and
Died.
this is how it works. So I'm not saying that you can't call or you have to pay for a coach in order to have a coach if
Mm.
that's not in your,
It's in
space.
to be completely honest, um I'm laying my foundations. I'm putting myself out there. But I would definitely, within the next 6 months to a year, I'm going to get really clear on who I'd love to work with, because I believe coaching is so invaluable. Like, to have someone see you and bear witness to you and have someone hold you accountable. I Yeah,
Mm,
very
mm-hmm,
beneficial.
mm-hmm. So I always had my biggest breakthroughs um, either with a coach, a personal coach, or in masterminds that were way above my either
Yeah.
pay grade or my zone of familiarity, where I really showed up scared out of my mind and felt unworthy, even though I knew I wasn't.
Yes.
Um, yeah, that's
That's literally
where,
what I've gone through. It's been amazing.
right? Yeah. So okay. So what have you created so far? Because I find it quite, you're such a go-getter.
Mm.
I find it very interesting, and I want to really shine the light here on that we are in our we create everything that we want. And whether or not we can or we can't, it's the truth, because it all actually only exists in our head.
Mm.
Like, there is nothing we can't learn, there is nothing we can't do. And
Too
all
hard.
you have to do is decide that you are going to, even if, maybe your calendar is full and you're teaching or you're still on stage, you will always find 30 minutes a day to get that 1% or that 0.5% further ahead in something that is your soul calling. So
Mm. I have a few soul callings. So I'd love to share that I currently have there are three amazing ways to work with me currently. One is this whole my whole life started with this with BAM, my dance company, working with people with disabilities. Like I said, I started it when I was 17 and I am turning 30 this year. I have a very specific specialized set of skills in this area. And so the first way that people can work with me is I have a 10-week dance and disability teacher training. And we go through anything from personal values to your why discovery to really getting clear on your unconscious bias and how you see disability, to creating lesson plans and teaching choreography and creating management and encouragement plans for the classrooms, just so that at the end of the 10 weeks as a teacher, you can walk out feeling like I am so confident with who I am as a teacher, what my values are, so that I can present myself as a business, so that I can walk out of this training being like, oh my gosh, I know my value. I know exactly what I bring to the table. I know what makes me an amazing teacher, how I was taught and how that informed how I teach, whether or not I'm keeping those or I'm going to shift and change and I'm going to be in a different way, whatever it is. So studios who are wanting to feel more confident in welcoming dancers who are disabled into their spaces, this is great. You can do it as a full team and a full company, or individual dancers can also go through this. So that's very disability and teacher specific. Then this is the next thing that I'm really passionate about, is cultivating more holistic cultures within dance spaces.
hmm.
So growing up, my dance studio was it was such a beautiful space. My bossiness was totally nurtured. I could speak to my dance teacher about anything. It was really friendly. What I came to realize, and through having conversations with other people, is that's not everybody's experience within the dance space. And so I started having these conversations and fell into the world of culture code and culture development. And so I now support studio owners in getting really clear on what their shared values are as an organization. And when I say shared values, you could have a value of inclusion, but you and I have a different definition of what inclusion is. So
Hmm.
it's really important for organizations to have shared values and definitions and have everybody contribute to those definitions, so that the teachers and the staff feel a sense of responsibility and ownership. And then how they translate into tangible behaviors, so what it looks like, so that everybody in the organization can give and receive feedback. So I think feedback is something that we shy away from, we get really anxious around, but feedback helps us grow. And we need to be able to receive feedback regardless of how it's delivered, but also work on our delivery of feedback. And I want studio owners to be in the loop. I would love to have proper feedback loops within dance spaces where the students and the community can give the owner also feedback and vice versa, so that it becomes flat systems. So that's also something that you can work with me if you want to cultivate a more holistic culture and create more feedback within your spaces. And then finally, yeah, I work with business owners one-on-one in a coaching capacity to support business owners in unplugging from the distraction in their life, whatever that looks like. For me, it's comparison. For other people, it could be money blocks. It could be family conditioning. It could be Instagram and social media, whatever it is, to get out of their way and unplug from distraction to build a really strong sense of trust so that they can increase their income and their impact. So
Mm,
10-week teacher training, culture code development, or one-on-one coaching.
thank you. Can we talk about money mindset quickly?
Mm.
Because you mentioned that. And, understanding that our
I'm
beliefs,
oh you sorry, go.
that our beliefs of ourselves and the stories that we have around money, particularly as an artist, as a dancer, are so impacting. They're so essential in our ability and availability to allow ourselves to earn money. Because let's be honest, isn't that the story? The starving artist, you never going to get rich, you're never going to have money. When I look at studio owners, they're in the studio for 12 hours a day and they're just, scraping by. There's a myth there.
Yeah.
And as we have established prior, is that, regardless in what kind of a situation we are in, and we're seeing the same challenges bubbling up every time, well, the only common denominator in this situation is us.
Mm.
So it is
Mm.
so important to really start with ourselves and understanding where
Yeah.
we're at and where we would like to be and how are we going to close that gap. So when you first started running a business, even as a 17, 18-year-old in your mid 20s, what kind of money mindset shifts did you have to
Mm.
um, allow in
Mm.
order to create abundance in your life?
Mm. So honestly, I didn't understand money energetics till about 3 years ago.
Oh, wow. Good for
So,
you.
yep. So I have subscribed to not the starving artist, more so like, oh, why do I never have money? Why do I never have money? I make money. Where does it go? Why can I never save these stories of these stories, because they are just stories. I can't save. I'm not a good saver. I never have enough money. So I never subscribe. The starving artist is one story. You might not subscribe to that, but you might be like, oh, I can just never keep money. So I think it's important to travel back in time, all the way back to childhood, and reflect on the stories that you heard about money. And when you hear, and it's not like a bedtime story when your parents sat you down and told you a story about money. I mean, how did your parents talk about it? Was it open communication about money? Was there guilt around money? Was it a hush hush conversation? Money's rude, don't talk about money. Was there conversations of make sure that you save everything because something might happen and you need to have money? Because the way that we show up with money as adults is some people get money and then spend it straight away because they're scared that they'll never have enough. So they just need to spend it. But then there are also people that never spend because they have this story that's like, I need money for a rainy day, and hoard money. So how money shows up in your life is a direct relationship to how you were shown money growing up. But once again, we could rebel. So it could be either the same, and so you're doing the same as what your parents did, or your guardians, or it could be the opposite. So if your family always saved and they were really, really fastidious and quite frugal, that's the right word, right? No, stingy. Frugal or stingy? Stingy.
Oh,
Oh, both. Okay.
you're asking the wrong person also.
Yeah, no, I think no, I think you're right. I think it could be both. Either way, if your parents always held on to money and they never spent it, then you might do the complete opposite and spend all the time. Either way, since adopting a more mindful approach to life, I have done a lot of reading and adopted my own approach to money energetics. And what I mean by that is I believe that money is kind of like radio waves. Like the radio is always kind of on, but until you actually tune in, you're not listening to it. Kind of like electricity. There's electricity everywhere, but until you turn on the switch, you don't know that you're in frequency with it. Money is the same. Money is everywhere. Are you just in frequency with it?
Yeah.
And so when I discovered this idea a couple of years ago, it was a conscious practice rooted in discipline that anytime I started to doubt my ability to make money, to keep money, to save money, I knew that it was a story, and I counteracted it with a money mindset affirmation. And my money mindset affirmation is that money flows to me easily and effortlessly. And I say that every day of my life. And I do this with my clients. They make up their own one, and every single day. And anytime there's any anxiety or stress or worry, once again, just like anxiety in life, regardless of money, we need to make sure that we are not identifying with our thoughts and we're doing something to counteract it. So I hope that answered your question.
Yes, it sure does. And I think I just want to add here that the only reason why arts organizations, why dancers don't make money or, struggle at times and still have support from their parents or rely on that kind of support is because of the stories that we have made up. And we have never ever in any decade challenged that belief, and with that looked for different ways and possibilities to make a difference, to have arts organization run as business, seen as businesses, still have a non-for-profit arm. But I believe strongly that particular in nowadays kind of world, a ballet company, opera company does not have to be a non-for-profit company organization. They can be a business. They can be a media company. They have so much content. Like I just don't. And I think that's where our opportunities really lie. Okay, last question, my love.
Yeah.
With everything, you've done so much work on yourself. If you could go back to your 16-year-old self and she would actually sit down and listen to you for a little bit, what is something you would tell her that would cut her learning curve in half and would allow her to, have an even quicker path to her dream life?
Well, I know exactly what I would say to her because I connect with my inner child all the time. And that is, you don't need to prove anything to anyone. You are enough as you are.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my 16-year-old self had a deep wound of rejection that shows up. It showed up on Tuesday. My boyfriend and I were lying in bed. He said something and I was like, oh, there she is again. She feels rejected. And so I go back to her and I say, you don't need to prove anything to anyone. You are enough as you are. And I think that would have cut years of pain and suffering off my life. Yeah. And that's such a beautiful question to ask. And it seems, I think we sometimes say, give that advice of like, what advice would you give your 16-year-old self? But that question is so important. It's not just what advice would you give her? Like you said, she's sitting there right with you right now. Like speak to her because she's also inside of you.
Yeah.
Like she's my 16-year-old self she's just with me all the time. So I love that question. And I think it's, yeah, thanks for allowing her to be here with us too.
And it's a hard conversation too,
Oh my
right?
goodness.
Because there's so many reasons why we don't want to go back in time and look at ourselves in those past versions because we think we weren't enough. And I want to insert here that most of the people that I have interviewed are actually telling their 16-year-old self exactly the same thing. You are enough. You are so, everything that you are looking for is inside you.
Mm,
Stop doubting yourself.
mm,
And I wonder, going over time here, bear with me. I wonder, what do we allow in our life
mm,
up to 16 that makes us believe that we are not enough? Like,
mm.
where is that disconnect? Because, I mean, I do know there can be different,
Yeah.
it can be different sources of it. Our parents, our teachers, peers, teenagers, bullies, whatever that is. I believe that it is so important to teach these kind of um philosophies and this kind of knowledge from as early on.
Yeah,
This whole rise of empowering women and teaching young girls and rebel girls and all of this is great.
me-
But what about the boys? Like, are we teaching our boys the same thing, as in be a confident man that can stand next to a woman without feeling threatened? you know and it is in there in these first 6, 7, 8, 10 years. For me, it was way beyond my 20s,
yeah.
where all of these wounds occurred, that if there would be more awareness, if we would empathize, to not teaching them how to be successful in school and write the perfect um, novel and the right math test and get an A+ for it. But if we would teach them also, and more so, how to connect with themselves and understand themselves, even though it might not be possible, but lay the path, I think we would not see so much depression. We wouldn't see so much suicide, drug abuse, all of these coping and numbing mechanisms that are so out of hand. And that's not only, we've seen that more and more even in the ballet world. Like all the sickness and the unhealthy practices that have established and are seeing as normal. Where is this going to go
Mm,
if we don't cut off the source?
mm, mm. I
Putting
think
that out
that,
here.
yeah, I think there needs to be a level of forgiveness. I think
Mm,
forgiveness is such a beautiful tool um, for our ability to grow.
mm,
I had a very humbling experience about a month ago where I had a falling out with a friend 7 years ago, and she reached out to me, and she handed me my ass on a silver platter, and she sent me a 7-minute voice note, just with so much compassion but so honest, just how much I'd hurt her, how much she was carrying wounds. And it was such a healing experience for me to forgive myself for how I acted in a past version of myself, but know that that's a part of me that still exists. And no matter how much I've expanded and how much I've grown, there was a level of forgiveness of like, yes, I did those things.
mm.
And, I took accountability, and it was a really beautiful experience. But that a level of forgiveness for myself, I think, is really, really important, so that we're not attached to the stories, and so that we can grow and we can evolve and we can expand, so that we can live the most and get the most out of the life that we're living.
So we're not stuck in the past and holding ourselves back from becoming
Yeah,
more,
yeah,
stepping into the future.
yeah.
Mm. Well, I could go on and on and on. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for speaking from your heart. Um,
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
this is this filled my cup too. So If you guys want to check Ali out, what she does, if you're interested in either working with her or following her, just go into the show notes. All her handles are in there. You just have to click on them. And yeah, we want you to share your biggest takeaway. It would mean the world to us because we're sitting here in our living rooms or offices and recording, and really would love to know what has been one thing that resonated with you so much. Share it on social media, tag both of us, and we will reshare you. And if it's you, we'll give you a shout out. All
Yeah.
right. Thank you, Ali. Thank you for being here. I really, really, really appreciated this conversation.
Thank you for
Sending you
having
so much love. Thank
me.
you. Bye bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening. If this message resonates with you, please pass it on to someone who needs to hear this right now. And if you like what you've heard, your feedback will go a very long way. If you just take 30 seconds and leave me a 5-star review, that would mean the world to me. Till next time, point at yourself to rise to all that you are capable of.